Tonight, breaking news. The Benghazi terrorist suspect, Ahmed Abu Khatallah, the Libyan militant charged in the 2012 Benghazi attacks, finally arrives in the U.S. and pleads not guilty before a federal judge. Khatallah is charged with conspiracy to provide material support to terrorism, resulting in death. The crime carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle in for Judge Janine Pirro. Thanks for joining us. So now that Khatallah is on U.S. soil, what's next? And was it the right call to bring him here? Ambassador John Bolton joins us. So Ambassador, what's your take? You think this was the right decision to send him to criminal court instead of military?
No, I think it was a big mistake, and I think it reflects a fundamental philosophical divide in how we treat the terrorist attacks on the United States. The Obama administration really has reverted to the pre-9/11 mode of looking at terrorist attacks as a law enforcement matter, sort of like knocking over the local Starbucks, only maybe a little worse. So they view this as a way to prosecute Khatallah and the others that they pick up in a regular criminal trial with full due process protections. I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think the war against terrorism, the war they've waged against us, should be treated under the law of war. And I think in this case, the Bush administration had it right when it opened Gitmo to put illegal enemy combatants like Khatallah in that facility and treat them as they deserve to be. I wouldn't myself even much be concerned about trying them in a military tribunal. I think they're prisoners of war for as long as the war lasts, which could be a long time, and subjects of interrogation for intelligence purposes, which under the Obama theory, we've only had 2 weeks for this particular defendant, not nearly enough time.
Yeah, because what if they weren't able to get the right source of intelligence material out of him during that short interim? It's not very long at all. Why are we going out of our way as a country to afford an individual like this, an enemy combatant, a terrorist, the same rights and privileges as U.S. citizens, bringing him here? It makes no sense to me. I do think it sends the wrong message internationally and to those that would do us harm. I want to talk to you about next steps for the accused Benghazi ringleader. What can we expect?
Well, I think it's going to go through the normal criminal process here. He's already had a court-appointed attorney. He's been read his Miranda rights. And the only question now is whether he clams up and basically tries to find technicalities to extricate himself from his current situation, or, which I think is more likely, he turns this trial into a propaganda exercise. You know, this is hardly the sort of prosecution that fits into a traditional criminal justice mode, and I think it underlines the point you just made, that this is fundamentally the wrong way to look at this. And it's not just this one trial or the circumstances of his only being interrogated for 2 weeks. It's the entire Obama administration mindset. It's an ideological fixation that the war on terror is over, that we don't want to talk about Islamic radicalism for fear of offending parts of the world where the radicals come from. And I think it's a blindness that the United States is going to suffer from. We see al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups like ISIS in Syria and Iraq growing in influence now, and yet we are pursuing our legitimate interests through the failed mechanisms of law enforcement as if it were the 1990s, as if 9/11 had never happened.
Yeah, and I think we can't afford to roll back like this. This is not the right approach. It's been a fundamental failure across the board, a fail by this administration. And I really think that the incompetence when it comes to national security and dealing with those enemies that want to do us harm has really just been just an abysmal failure on behalf of this administration. And now look at, we are suffering the repercussions of it. Let's talk about the politics of this and the optics. Do you think the timing of Khatallah's capture could have been politically motivated? This is a guy that was out in wide open space in front of everybody, open and notorious, and we wait this long to get him. What's going on here?
Yeah, I don't think there's any good explanation for it. You know, I don't think you can cut the timing down to a matter of days, but there had to be some reason why we couldn't get him over a year ago. If journalists could talk to him, there's no reason why American Special Forces couldn't have picked him up. And I think that the only explanation we have, at least for some period of that time, is that Obama didn't want to acknowledge how serious the terrorist threat was in Libya, a place where he had exercised his famous leadership from behind, and saw the state that replaced Gaddafi basically collapse around him. I think there's a lot Congress needs to look into here.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now, moving on, I want to get your take on this. The Supreme Court dealt a blow this week to President Obama's recess appointment power. Now, as you recall, President Bush made your nomination official by recess appointment. What's the difference here, Ambassador?
Well, the difference here is that Obama vastly overreached in his assertion of the recess appointment power. Congress, so the Senate had gone into pro forma session, coming back once every 3 days. And Obama basically said, well, they're not really holding sessions. They're in a much longer recess than once every 3 days. I'm going to disregard the Senate's own statement about its own rules and give 3 NLRB commissioners recess appointments. I think the court reached the right result. That was clearly overreaching, but it hides a much more fundamental problem here, which I think is the Obama administration's overreaching in a whole variety of areas, not just on recess appointments.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And this is another blow to the president and his ability in trying to just overreach on a number of different issues, and we're seeing it here as well. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
All right, well, the president had a tough week, right? In addition to Supreme